Welcome back to Jungle War Stories. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for your support. I need to tell you about something that happened in February of 2006. Something that changed the way I understand the world. Something that the United States Air Force has spent 18 years trying to bury, deny, and forget. My name is Captain Jacob Sullivan. In February of 2006, I was 29 years old, stationed at a remote early warning radar installation in northern Alaska, about 250 miles north of Fairbanks. The installation was designated Station Delta 7, though we just called it Delta. There were 32 people stationed there: scientists, technicians, security personnel, support staff. We monitored airspace over the Arctic, tracked weather patterns, collected atmospheric data. Important work, but isolated work. Lonely work. 22 of those people are dead now. The official explanation is a catastrophic heating system failure that led to mass casualties from extreme cold exposure. That's what the families were told. That's what went into the official record. It's a lie. I'm 57 years old now. I've been out of the Air Force for 15 years. I've had 2 heart attacks and a stroke. My doctors say I probably have another 5 years, maybe less. My wife died in 2019. My daughter doesn't talk to me anymore. I have nothing left to lose and everything left to tell. Station Delta 7 was built in 1983 during the height of the Cold War. It was one of dozens of installations scattered across Alaska, designed to give early warning if Soviet bombers or missiles came over the pole. After the Soviet Union collapsed, most of these stations were shut down. Delta 7 stayed operational because of its scientific value. The atmospheric conditions in that part of Alaska made it ideal for certain kinds of research. The base itself was small. 3 main buildings connected by enclosed corridors. The radar facility, where I worked. The HAB facility, where we slept and ate and tried to maintain some sense of normal life. And the generator building, where our power and heating systems were housed. Everything was designed to withstand the brutal Arctic winter. Triple insulated walls, redundant heating systems, emergency backup generators. We could survive months without outside support if necessary. In February, the temperature routinely dropped to 40 below zero, sometimes colder. The sun barely rose above the horizon. We had maybe 3 hours of twilight each day. The rest was darkness. The wind came off the Arctic Ocean like a knife, cutting through any exposed skin in seconds. Frostbite could happen in under a minute. Hypothermia in under 5. If you went outside without proper gear, you would die, quickly. We were isolated. The nearest settlement was a small native village 70 miles south. The nearest military base was Eielson Air Force Base, 250 miles away. Supply runs came every 2 weeks, weather permitting. Sometimes the weather didn't permit for a month or more. We learned to be self-sufficient. We learned to rely on each other. There were 32 of us. I need you to know who they were. They weren't just casualties on a report. They weren't just numbers. They were people with lives, with families, with dreams that were cut short in the worst way imaginable. Major Sarah Blackwood was our commanding officer. She was 42 years old, 20 years in the Air Force, and she'd been stationed at Delta 7 for 2 years. That was an unusually long assignment for that post. Most people did 6 months and rotated out, eager to get back to civilization, to warmth, to sunlight. But Sarah stayed. She requested extensions. She volunteered to remain because she loved the work, loved the isolation, loved the purity of a mission that was about science and discovery rather than politics and bureaucracy. Sarah had joined the Air Force to escape a difficult family situation in Idaho. Her father had been abusive. Her mother had been unable or unwilling to protect her. She enlisted at 18 and never looked back. The military gave her structure, purpose, a family that cared about her achievements rather than trying to control her. She'd worked her way up through the ranks, earned her commission through officer training school, specialized in atmospheric and space operations. She was brilliant. Not just smart, but genuinely brilliant in a way that made other people uncomfortable sometimes. She could see patterns in data that others missed. She could predict atmospheric changes days in advance. She understood the complex interplay of solar radiation, magnetic fields, and climate systems in ways that even the PhD scientists respected. Sarah had a partner, Linda, back in Seattle. They'd met at a conference on climate science in 2001. Linda was a marine biologist, studying ocean acidification and coral bleaching. They'd been together for 5 years, planning their future together. They were going to retire somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, somewhere with trees and rain and moderate temperatures. They were going to buy a small house with a garden. They were going to spend their days hiking and reading and making up for all the time they'd lost to their careers. Linda never got to see her again, never got to hear the truth about what happened. She waited for weeks for a body that never came, for answers that were all lies. I tried to contact her once, in 2008, thinking maybe I could give her some closure, but her number was disconnected. She'd moved, disappeared, probably couldn't bear to stay in the place where she'd planned her future with Sarah. Senior Master Sergeant Thomas Reyes was our senior enlisted advisor and head of security. He was 38 years old, from San Antonio, Texas, built like a tank with a voice that could stop you in your tracks from 50 yards away. Tom was the kind of NCO that the Air Force is built on. The guy who knows everyone's job better than they do, who can fix any problem, who keeps everything running when the officers are too busy looking at the big picture to see the details. Tom had grown up poor in a rough neighborhood. His father had been killed in a convenience store robbery when Tom was 12. His mother worked 3 jobs to keep him and his 3 siblings fed. Tom joined the Air Force at 17 to escape that poverty, to send money home, to make his mother proud. He'd been in for 20 years, had seen action in the First Gulf War, in Bosnia, in Afghanistan. He was tough, smart, and absolutely dedicated to taking care of his people. He was married to Maria, his high school sweetheart. They'd been together since they were 16 years old. Maria had waited for him through every deployment, every assignment, every hardship posting. She raised their kids mostly alone while Tom served. They had 3 children, twin boys, Miguel and Carlos, who were 10 years old and obsessed with soccer, and a daughter, Sophia, who was 7 and wanted to be an astronaut. Tom showed me pictures of them every single day. Every morning in the mess hall, he'd pull out his phone and show me new photos. Miguel's latest goal, Carlos's school project, Sophia's drawing of the moon. He was supposed to rotate back to Texas in March. He was going to coach the boys' soccer team. He was going to teach Sophia about the stars. He was going to finally be there for his family instead of thousands of miles away in the frozen dark. Maria got a flag and a letter. The boys are 28 now. Sophia is 25. I wonder if they remember their father. I wonder if they know he died a hero, fighting something impossible to save people he barely knew. Dr. Elizabeth Marsh was our lead scientist, the reason the Air Force kept Delta 7 operational even after its military purpose had faded. She was 51 years old, had a PhD in atmospheric physics from MIT, had published over 60 papers in peer-reviewed journals. Her work on ozone depletion had been cited thousands of times. She was studying climate change before it was politically acceptable to do so, documenting atmospheric anomalies that would take another decade for the mainstream scientific community to acknowledge. Elizabeth had dedicated her life to science. She'd never married, never had time for romantic relationships. The atmosphere was her passion, her obsession, her everything. But she did have a son, David, from a brief relationship in graduate school. She'd raised him alone while completing her PhD, working 3 part-time jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, somehow managing to be both a world-class scientist and a devoted mother. David was in his 3rd year of medical school at Harvard when Elizabeth was stationed in Alaska. She talked about him constantly, every conversation somehow circling back to his achievements. He'd published his first research paper. He was considering specializing in neurology. He'd met a girl he really liked. Elizabeth was so proud of him, so excited about his future. She was counting down the days until she could retire and spend more time with him, maybe even move to Boston to be close to him. David graduated in 2009. Elizabeth wasn't there. He became a neurologist. He got married. He had 2 children. His mother never met her grandchildren. All because something came out of the Arctic night and killed her while she was trying to help someone. Technical Sergeant Michael Chen was our senior radar operator, 26 years old, from the Bay Area in California, youngest of 5 siblings in an overachieving family. His oldest brother was a lawyer. His sister was a doctor. Another brother was an engineer. His other sister was a professor. Michael was the youngest, always feeling like he had to prove himself, always working twice as hard to keep up with his siblings' accomplishments. Michael had joined the Air Force partly for college money, partly to find his own path separate from his family's expectations. He'd discovered a natural talent for radar systems, for pattern recognition, for sitting in front of screens for 12 hours straight and never losing focus. He could spot anomalies that other operators missed. He could track objects through weather that should have made detection impossible. He was the best radar operator I'd ever worked with. He was engaged to a woman named Ashley Chen, no relation. They'd met at a wedding, bonded over having the same last name, started dating, fell in love. Michael proposed to her in front of the Golden Gate Bridge on a foggy morning that reminded him of the first time they'd met. She said yes. They were planning to get married in June, a simple ceremony with family and friends, nothing fancy because they were saving money for a house. Michael had already bought the house, a small place near Travis Air Force Base where he was going to be stationed after Delta 7. 3 bedrooms, a yard, a garage where he could work on the old car he'd been restoring. He sent Ashley pictures of the house every week, talked about what furniture they'd buy, what color to paint the walls, where to plant the garden she wanted. Ashley waited for him. She kept that house. She couldn't bring herself to sell it. I found out later that she'd lived in it alone for 3 years, waiting, hoping, refusing to believe he was really gone. She finally sold it in 2009 and moved back in with her parents. I don't know what happened to her after that. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Wells was our communications specialist. 34 years old, from Portland, Maine, grew up in a military family. Her father had been a Marine, her mother had been Navy. She'd grown up on bases all over the world, never staying in one place long enough to really put down roots. She joined the Air Force because it was what she knew, what made sense to her. The constant moving, the rigid structure, the sense of mission. It was home. Jennifer was adopted. Her biological parents had given her up when she was 2 weeks old. But she'd been lucky. She'd been adopted by 2 men, David and Robert Wells, who loved her unconditionally. They'd navigated the complicated adoption system, fought the prejudices of the 1970s, given her a stable home and endless support. She talked about her dads constantly, how proud they were of her, how they'd supported her decision to join the military even though it meant seeing her even less than they already did. David had been a professor of literature at Bowdoin College. Robert had been a physician. They were both retired when Jennifer was stationed at Delta 7, living in a small house on the Maine coast, waiting for their daughter to come home and visit. She called them every week, told them about her work, about the other people at the base, about the strange beauty of the Arctic. They never got to see her again. They got a flag, a letter, and lies. David died in 2012, Robert in 2015. I think they both died of broken hearts. These were just 5 of the 32. I could tell you about all of them. Harold Martinez, our cook, who was from New Mexico and made the best green chili anyone had ever tasted. He sent recipes to his grandmother every week, learning family traditions he'd never had time to learn growing up. Patricia Owens, our meteorologist who was from Iowa and could predict weather patterns 3 days out with uncanny accuracy. She had a 12-year-old daughter who wanted to follow in her footsteps. David Kim, our maintenance chief, who was from Hawaii and kept our aging equipment running when it should have failed. He was saving money to bring his parents to the mainland for the first time. James Walker, our logistics officer, who was from Georgia and had a laugh that could fill a room. He was planning to propose to his girlfriend when he rotated back stateside. All of them had families. All of them had dreams. All of them had futures. All of them are gone now, reduced to lines in a classified report that says they died from heating system failure and exposure to cold. It's a lie, and they deserved better. I was the operations officer responsible for coordinating our various missions and maintaining contact with higher command. I'd been at Delta 7 for 4 months when it happened. 4 months of learning to live in conditions that most people couldn't imagine. 4 months of adapting to the darkness, the cold, the isolation. 4 months of watching the sun fade from the sky and wondering if it would ever come back. I'd arrived in October when there was still some daylight. Back then, we'd get maybe 8 hours of sun, though it never rose very high in the sky. The light was weak, slanted, casting long shadows even at noon. But it was light. It was something. I watched it fade over the weeks. By November, we were down to 4 hours. By December, 2. By January, the sun barely crept above the horizon before sinking back down. We lived in perpetual twilight, or perpetual night, depending on the time of day. The darkness did things to people. Some adapted better than others. Wells seemed to thrive in it, said she'd always been a night person, found the darkness comforting. Reyes treated it like another operational challenge to overcome. Dr. Marsh was so focused on her work that she barely noticed whether it was day or night, but others struggled. I saw Davis crying in the corridor one day, said she couldn't remember what the sun looked like. I saw Walker staring at photographs of sunny beaches on his computer, his hand trembling. I felt it myself sometimes, a weight pressing down on me, a sense that the dark was alive and watching. We had protocols for this, mandatory light therapy sessions, vitamin D supplements, strict sleep schedules to maintain circadian rhythms, recreational activities to keep people engaged. But protocols could only do so much against 3 months of darkness. The cold was more straightforward. Cold you could understand, could protect against, could measure and quantify. -40 meant certain precautions. -50 meant others. There were rules. Stay inside as much as possible. If you have to go outside, full Arctic gear without exception. Buddy system always. Never more than 10 minutes in the open. Watch for frostbite. Watch for hypothermia. Watch for equipment failure. We'd had close calls. In December, a ventilation fan failed in the generator building. Kim went out to fix it, full gear, took Russo with him as backup. They were outside for maybe 15 minutes. When they came back in, Kim's cheek was white. Frostbite. First degree, minor, healed in a few days. But it was a reminder. The environment was always testing us, always looking for weaknesses. We'd learned to move deliberately. No rushing, no panic. Everything measured and planned. Because a mistake at -40 could kill you. Leave a door unsealed and the heat would drain out. Drop your gloves and your fingers would freeze in seconds. Fall in the snow and you might not get back up. But we'd been doing well. 4 months with no serious incidents, no major equipment failures, no medical emergencies. The rotation of personnel had gone smoothly. We were a functional team, working together, looking out for each other. Blackwood ran a tight ship, but a fair one. Reyes kept everything organized. Dr. Marsh kept us focused on the mission. We were making it work. I was supposed to rotate out in March. 6-month tour, standard for Delta 7. I'd been looking forward to it. Looking forward to warmth, to daylight, to being around more than 32 people. My girlfriend Rachel was waiting for me in Colorado. We'd been together for 2 years, doing the long-distance thing because of my career. She was patient, understanding, supportive. But I knew it was hard on her. I was planning to propose when I got back. I'd already bought the ring, had it hidden in my quarters. I was going to take her to that mountain restaurant she loved, wait until sunset, ask her to marry me. I never got the chance. The ring is still in my quarters at Delta 7. Or it was. I don't know what happened to the base after. They might have demolished it. They might have just sealed it and left everything inside to freeze forever. The attack started on February 14th, 2006, Valentine's Day. I remember thinking how strange it was that we were 250 miles from civilization, in the dark, in the cold, and some of the personnel still managed to celebrate. Wells had organized a small party in the rec room. Someone had brought decorations on the last supply run. There was music, bad coffee, cookies that Martinez had baked. People were laughing, joking, pretending for a few hours that we were somewhere warm and normal. I was in the radar facility with Chen, monitoring our screens. Standard duty. We'd been tracking weather patterns, watching for aircraft, collecting data. Normal routine, normal night. Then the equipment started malfunctioning. It started small. A screen flickering. A readout showing impossible data. Chen reset the system, ran diagnostics, checked connections. Everything appeared normal. But the anomalies continued. Temperature sensors reading values that couldn't be real. Atmospheric pressure dropping impossibly fast. Electromagnetic interference across all frequencies. Chen called me over to his station. He showed me the radar display. There was something out there. Something big. About 3 miles north of our position. But it wasn't moving like anything we'd ever tracked. It wasn't an aircraft. It wasn't weather. It was just there. A massive return on our screens that shouldn't exist. I asked Chen what he thought it was. He said he didn't know. But his hands were shaking. I called Major Blackwood, reported the anomaly. She came to the radar facility within minutes, Reyes right behind her. They looked at the screens, looked at the data, looked at each other. Blackwood made a decision. She told Reyes to put the base on alert. She told Chen to keep monitoring. She told me to try to establish what we were dealing with. Then the power went out. Not completely. The emergency lights kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. But main power was gone. The radar went down. Communications went down. Everything went down except the backup systems. Kim reported from the generator building. Primary generator had failed. Cause unknown. Secondary generator was running but operating at reduced capacity. He was working on bringing the primary back online. We had procedures for this. Power failures weren't uncommon in Alaska. We'd handled them before. But something felt different this time. Something felt wrong. The temperature in the HAB facility started dropping. Our heating system was tied to the main power. On backup power, we had heat in essential areas only. The corridors connecting the buildings were no longer heated. The rec room where the party had been was getting cold fast. Reyes started organizing people. Everyone to the HAB facility central area where we still had heat. Emergency cold weather gear distributed to everyone. No one goes outside without explicit authorization. Standard cold weather emergency protocol. That's when we heard the sound. It came from outside. A low rumbling, like machinery, but organic somehow. Like something alive was making a mechanical sound. It vibrated through the walls, through the floor, through our bones. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Listening. The sound grew louder, closer. It was moving around the perimeter of the base, circling us. Reyes grabbed his rifle and headed for the main entrance. I followed him. Blackwood was right behind me. We reached the airlock that led outside. It had a small reinforced window. Reyes looked through it. His face went pale. He said we needed to seal everything. Every door, every window, every access point. He said we needed to do it now. I asked him what he saw. He said he didn't know what he saw. But we needed to seal the base. Blackwood gave the order. Emergency lockdown. All exterior doors sealed and barricaded. All personnel to the central hab area. Armed personnel at all entry points. The sound outside grew louder. Something was hitting the walls. Heavy impacts that shook the entire structure. Not trying to break in yet. Just testing, probing, looking for weakness. Dr. Marsh was monitoring our instruments. What few were still working on backup power. She said the electromagnetic interference was off the charts. She said our thermometers outside were showing temperature drops that violated physics. She said whatever was out there was generating some kind of field that was affecting our equipment and the environment around it. The impacts on the walls grew harder, louder, more frequent. Something was trying to get in. Reyes positioned his security team at strategic points. 6 armed airmen, including himself. Not many, but we were a scientific installation, not a combat base. We had small arms for bear protection, for security. Nothing more. The lights flickered. The backup generator was straining. Kim reported that something was interfering with the generator. The equipment was failing in ways that didn't make sense. Components burning out for no reason. Systems shutting down despite having power. We were losing our backup systems. The temperature inside was dropping. I could see my breath. People were putting on more layers, huddling together for warmth. Then the wall of the hab facility exploded inward. Not the door, not a window. The wall itself. 3 feet of insulated steel and concrete, designed to withstand Arctic storms and extreme temperatures, engineered to last decades in the harshest environment on Earth. It ripped open like tissue paper. The metal screamed as it tore, a sound like a wounded animal, impossibly loud in the enclosed space. The cold rushed in like a physical wave, hitting us with force, dropping the temperature 20 degrees in seconds. The wind howled through the breach, carrying snow and ice that stung exposed skin like needles. And something came through the opening. I saw it clearly. We all did. There was no mistaking it for anything natural, anything explainable, anything from our world. It was huge. Maybe 12 feet tall, maybe more. Hard to judge because its proportions were wrong. Roughly humanoid in shape. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head. But that's where the similarity ended. Its body was covered in something that looked like ice, but moved like flesh. Translucent and crystalline, but organic, alive. I could see through parts of it, see the structure underneath, see things moving inside that didn't make anatomical sense. Its surface caught the emergency lights and refracted them, creating patterns that hurt to look at, that seemed to move independent of the creature itself. Its limbs were too long, grotesquely long, jointed in too many places. Arms that reached nearly to the ground when it stood upright. Legs that bent backward at the knee and then forward again at another joint that shouldn't exist. Fingers that were more like talons, each one a foot long, tapering to points sharp enough to tear metal. Its head was elongated, stretched vertically, coming to a point at the top. No eyes that I could see. No nose, no ears. Just smooth, crystalline surface. But I could feel it looking at us anyway. I could feel its attention, its awareness, its hunger. It radiated cold the way a fire radiates heat. I could feel the temperature dropping as it moved into the room. Could see frost spreading on the walls and floor wherever it stepped. It moved fast, impossibly fast. Faster than anything that size should be able to move. One moment it was at the breach, the next it was across the room, covering 30 feet in a heartbeat. Its movements were fluid, but also jerky. like it existed slightly out of sync with normal time, like it was moving between frames of reality. Reyes reacted first. Training kicked in. He brought his M4 carbine up and opened fire. The sound in the enclosed space was deafening, the muzzle flash blinding. I saw his rounds hit the thing, saw the impact, saw chips of that crystalline surface flying off. But they didn't penetrate. They just stopped, embedded in that ice flesh, like shooting into a wall. His security team opened fire. 6 rifles on full auto, pouring rounds into the creature. The noise was overwhelming, a continuous roar that drowned out everything else. Brass casings scattered across the floor. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. I saw hundreds of rounds hit their target. The thing didn't slow down. It reached out with one of those 2 long arms and grabbed Airman First Class Rodriguez, one of Reyes's security team. 23 years old, from Arizona, had been at Delta 7 for 2 months. The thing's hand closed around his chest, fingers wrapping completely around his torso. Rodriguez had time to scream. The scream lasted maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. High-pitched, full of more terror than I'd ever heard in a human voice. Then his entire body froze solid. Instant. Complete. One moment he was a living, screaming human being. The next he was a statue of ice, his face locked in that expression of absolute horror, his mouth open, his eyes wide. The thing dropped him. Rodriguez hit the floor and shattered, just shattered like glass dropped on concrete. Pieces of him scattered across the room. An arm here, part of his torso there. His head rolled to a stop near the wall, eyes still frozen open, still showing that terror. People were screaming. 20-plus civilians and support personnel with no combat training, faced with something out of a nightmare. They ran in every direction, looking for exits that didn't exist, looking for safety in a room that offered none. Some huddled against walls. Some tried to hide under tables. Some just stood frozen in shock, unable to process what they were seeing. The thing moved through the room, systematically reaching for people. Everyone it touched froze instantly. Wells tried to help someone, tried to pull them away. The thing's hand brushed her shoulder. Just brushed it. Barely made contact. Jennifer Wells, 34 years old, communications specialist, adopted daughter of 2 fathers who loved her. She froze mid-motion, her body turned to ice in a heartbeat, her expression shifting from determination to shock to nothing. She fell and broke into pieces. Blackwood was shouting orders, trying to organize a retreat, trying to get people to the corridors. Her voice was strong, steady, professional even in the face of impossible horror. She was a leader to the end. But there were more of them now. More creatures coming through the breach. 3, 4, 5 of these things, all moving with that terrible speed, all reaching out with those crystalline arms, all killing with a touch. Martinez, our cook, was trying to help Dr. Marsh get to safety. One of the things reached for him. He saw it coming, tried to dodge. The thing's fingers caught his leg. His left leg froze instantly, from hip to toes, turning to solid ice while the rest of him was still flesh. He fell, screaming. Hit the ground. His frozen leg shattered on impact. I saw him lying there, conscious, alive, looking down at where his leg used to be, his face a mask of shock and pain. Then another creature reached for him. He disappeared under that crystalline hand and turned to ice completely. Reyes was backing toward the corridor that led to the generator building, still firing, trying to cover people's retreat. He was shouting for everyone to fall back, to get to the other buildings, to run and don't stop running. His rifle was nearly empty. He dropped the magazine, slammed in a fresh one, kept firing. Every shot precise, every shot hitting center mass, none of them doing any good. Kim, our maintenance chief, was ahead of Reyes in the corridor, waving people forward, counting them as they passed. Dr. Marsh went by him. Davis, Owens, Walker, a few others. I grabbed 2 people near me who were frozen in terror, physically shook them until they could move, pushed them toward the corridor. They ran. Behind me, the HAB facility was a slaughterhouse. Bodies everywhere. Some intact, frozen in ice. Others shattered into pieces. Blood and ice mixed together on the floor. The temperature had dropped so far that the blood was freezing, creating grotesque sculptures of red ice. I saw Blackwood still directing people, still trying to save whoever she could. She was the commanding officer. She would be the last one out. That was her duty. That was who she was. But there were too many of the creatures. They were between her and the corridor. She was cut off. She looked at me. Our eyes met across the chaos. She gave me a nod. Not goodbye, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. 2 professionals doing an impossible job. Then the creatures reached her. Sarah Blackwood, 42 years old, brilliant scientist, dedicated officer, partner to Linda, who would never know how she really died. She froze where she stood, her hand still raised in that final gesture of command. I ran for the corridor. Others were ahead of me. Behind me, I could hear the things tearing apart what was left of the HAB facility, hear them killing anyone too slow or too paralyzed to escape. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I would freeze, not from their touch, from horror. I made it to the corridor. Kim was there, still counting people, still trying to account for everyone. He saw my face and knew. He understood. There was no one else coming. Everyone who was going to make it was already through. He hit the emergency seal on the corridor door. Heavy steel barriers slammed down, cutting us off from the HAB facility, cutting us off from everyone still in there. We heard them dying through the door, screaming, begging, the sounds of ice and shattering and death. Then silence. We ran through the unheated corridor, the temperature dropping with every step, our breath crystallizing in front of us, ice forming on the walls. The corridor was maybe 100 feet long. It felt like miles. We made it to the generator building, 11 of us. Out of 32, 21 people dead in less than 5 minutes. Kim slammed the door behind us and started the emergency lockdown sequence. The generator building was the most fortified space on the base, designed to protect critical equipment. Reinforced walls, sealed doors, its own independent heating system. If anywhere was safe, it was here. But I didn't feel safe. I could hear the things moving through the base, tearing it apart, looking for us. And I knew the doors wouldn't hold them forever. Kim said he could get the primary generator running, but it would take time. Maybe an hour. We didn't have an hour. The things were already at the corridor door trying to break through. Someone asked what those things were. Nobody had an answer. We barricaded ourselves in the generator room. It was the most fortified space in the building, designed to protect critical equipment. But I didn't know if it would be enough. The temperature in the building was dropping fast. We could hear the things moving through the facility, tearing it apart, looking for us. I tried the radio. Nothing. I tried the satellite phone. Nothing. We were completely cut off. One of the airmen, Specialist Davis, was sobbing. She kept saying we were all going to die. She was 19 years old. She'd been at Delta 7 for 3 weeks. I didn't have any words of comfort for her, because she was probably right. We heard them at the door, tearing at it. The metal groaning under the assault. We could see frost spreading across the door from the other side, ice crystals growing, the metal becoming brittle. Kim got the generator running. Full power surged through the system. The lights came back on. Heat started flowing. But the door was breaking. I made a decision. I told everyone to get to the equipment garage, to the vehicles. If we could get to a truck, if we could get the door open, we could try to run. It was 250 miles to Eielson, in February, in the dark, in a truck that might not have enough fuel, but it was better than staying here and dying. We ran for the garage. Behind us, the door to the generator room finally gave way. I heard the things coming after us. The garage had 2 trucks, heavy 4-wheel drive vehicles designed for Arctic conditions. Kim had keys. We piled into both trucks, 6 people in one, 5 in the other. Davis hit the button to open the garage door. It started rolling up, slowly. So slowly. The things burst into the garage, coming fast, coming for us. Kim started his truck. I started mine. The garage door was halfway open, 3/4. The things were almost on us. The door was open. Kim's truck roared forward, disappeared into the darkness and cold. I hit the gas. My truck lurched forward. Something grabbed the back bumper. I felt the truck being pulled backward. I floored it. The engine screamed. The thing held on. I could see it in the mirror. That crystalline nightmare, trying to pull us back. Then, something gave way. The bumper tore off. We shot forward, out of the garage, into the Arctic night. I didn't slow down. I followed Kim's taillights. Behind us, the base was burning. Somehow, impossibly, it was burning despite the cold, despite the ice, despite everything. We drove south, through the darkness, through the cold that was trying to kill us with every passing second, through an Arctic night that seemed endless. The truck's heater was running full blast, but it was barely enough. I could see my breath despite the heat pouring from the vents. The windows were frosting over on the inside, ice crystals spreading across the glass. We had to keep wiping them clear just to see where we were going, our hands getting colder every time we touched the frozen surface. Specialist Davis was in my truck, along with Owens and Walker. Davis was in the back seat, crying, her whole body shaking. She kept saying we'd left them behind. She kept saying we should have saved more people. She was 19 years old. She'd been at Delta 7 for 3 weeks. Her first real assignment. She'd written to her mother every day, telling her about the work, the people, the strange beauty of the Arctic. She'd been planning to go home on leave in March, spend time with her family, tell them about her experiences. Now she was the only thing standing between her mother and complete devastation. If Davis had died too, her mother would have lost everyone. Davis's father had died when she was 12. Her older brother had been killed in Iraq in 2004. Davis was all her mother had left. I tried to tell her it wasn't her fault, tried to say we'd done everything we could. But the words felt empty. We'd left 21 people behind, 21 people dead or dying while we ran. What could I possibly say to make that okay? Owens was in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, not speaking. Patricia Owens, our meteorologist, who could predict weather 3 days out with uncanny accuracy. She had a daughter, Emma, who was 12 years old, who wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps. Owens hadn't said a word since we got in the truck. Her hands were folded in her lap, her face was blank. I think she was in shock. Walker was next to Davis in the back, his face pressed against the window, watching behind us. James Walker, our logistics officer, who had a laugh that could fill a room. He wasn't laughing now. He kept checking, kept looking, making sure nothing was following us. Every few minutes, he'd ask if I saw anything in the mirror. Every time I said no. But I wasn't sure. The darkness was absolute. Our headlights only reached so far. Beyond that was nothing but black. I followed Kim's taillights ahead of us. His truck was maybe 100 yards in front, moving fast, too fast for the conditions, but none of us cared about safety anymore. We'd just escaped something impossible. We'd just watched our friends die in ways that violated every law of physics and biology. Caution seemed pointless. I kept checking the fuel gauge. 3/4, then half, then a third. We were burning through gas faster than we should have been, the truck's engine straining against the cold. the heater drawing extra power, the rough terrain forcing us to use more throttle than normal. I did the math in my head. 250 miles to Eielson. We had maybe enough fuel to make it 2/3 of that distance. Maybe. We were going to run out of gas in the middle of the Arctic. In February. In the dark. With no way to call for help. But that was still better than staying at Delta 7. The Arctic night stretched on forever. Time lost meaning. We'd been driving for what felt like hours, but my watch said it had only been 45 minutes. The monotony of darkness, of cold, of road that all looked the same, made it impossible to judge how far we'd gone, or how far we still had to go. Davis asked if I thought the things were still at the base or if they'd moved on. I said I didn't know. She asked if I thought there were more of them, if they'd been there all along, living under the ice, waiting. I said I didn't know. She asked if we were safe. I lied and said yes. The truth was I had no idea what those things were, where they'd come from, or what they wanted. I had no idea if they were unique to Delta 7 or if they were spread across the entire Arctic. I had no idea if they were natural or supernatural or alien or something else entirely. All I knew was that they existed, they were deadly, and they'd killed 21 people in less than 10 minutes. Martinez's voice crackled over the radio. He was in Kim's truck. He said they were low on fuel, too. He said at current consumption they had maybe another hour before they ran dry. I acknowledged. Told him to keep going. Told him we'd figure it out when we had to. But I didn't know how we were going to figure it out. We were in the middle of nowhere. No towns, no gas stations, no nothing. Just endless frozen wilderness in every direction. Walker said he saw lights behind us. I checked the mirror. Nothing. Just darkness. He insisted. Said he saw something. Brief flashes. Like headlights, but not quite. I told him to keep watching. Told him to let me know if he saw it again. 5 minutes later, he saw it again. Lights. Distant. Following us. I pushed the accelerator down. The truck lurched forward. Kim's truck ahead of us sped up too. Martinez must have seen the same thing. We drove faster. Too fast for safety. The truck fishtailed on patches of ice. The steering wheel fought me. But I didn't slow down. If those things were following us, if they'd somehow gotten vehicles, or were moving fast enough to keep pace, we needed distance. The lights behind us got brighter, closer. Davis was sobbing now. Owens had her eyes closed, lips moving silently. Walker was staring out the back window, his face pressed against the glass. Then the sun started to come up. Not full sunrise. This was February in the Arctic. But that brief period of twilight, that moment when the edge of the sun peaks above the horizon before sinking back down. The sky to the southeast began to lighten. Gray, then pink, then orange. The lights behind us disappeared. Whatever had been following us, it was gone. We drove for another hour. The fuel gauge kept dropping. Quarter tank, then less. Then the low fuel light came on. Finally, miraculously, we saw lights ahead. Real lights. A settlement. The native village of Nuiqsut, population maybe 400, mostly Inupiat families living traditional lifestyles supplemented by modern conveniences. We pulled into the village, our trucks running on fumes, barely making it to the first building before the engines died. We stumbled out, our legs barely working, our bodies numb from cold and shock and exhaustion. The villagers took us in immediately. No questions, no hesitation, just immediate compassion and help. They brought us into the community center, wrapped us in blankets, gave us hot coffee and food. They called for help on their radio, contacted the Air Force, reported that survivors from Delta 7 had arrived. I sat in a corner, wrapped in a blanket, drinking coffee that I couldn't taste, watching the other survivors, 11 of us. Kim, Davis, Owens, Walker, Martinez, Russo, and 5 others whose names I'm ashamed to say I don't remember now. We'd all been in shock, all traumatized, all barely functioning. We didn't talk about what happened. Not then. Maybe we couldn't. Maybe the words didn't exist. We just sat there, warming slowly, trying to remember what it felt like to be safe. Air Force rescue came 12 hours later. A helicopter from Eielson, medics and security personnel, concerned faces and professional efficiency. They loaded us up, flew us south, away from the Arctic, away from Delta 7, away from whatever had killed our friends. They took us to Eielson Air Force Base, separated us immediately, put us in different rooms, different buildings. I didn't see the other survivors again for 3 weeks. When I finally did, it was in a debriefing room where we were all told the same lie and threatened into silence. The official story was heating system failure, catastrophic. 22 personnel lost to extreme cold exposure. Tragic accident. Nothing could have been done. The survivors were lucky to escape. That's what went into the record. That's what the families were told. Reyes's wife Maria got a flag and a letter. His kids got a father who died from equipment failure. Blackwood's partner Linda got lies. Dr. Marsh's son David got lies. Chen's fiancée Ashley got lies. Wells's fathers got lies. All 22 families got the same sanitized fiction. Because the truth was too dangerous, too impossible, too threatening to everything the Air Force wanted people to believe about the world. They made us sign documents, non-disclosure agreements with teeth. They threatened us with court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison time, the destruction of everyone we loved. They said if we ever spoke about what really happened, we would be considered threats to national security and dealt with accordingly. We all signed. What choice did we have? They scattered us. Different bases, different assignments. I never saw any of the other survivors again. I tried to find them over the years. Some had been discharged, some had transferred to classified assignments, some had just vanished. I got out of the Air Force in 2011. I tried to build a normal life. I got married, had a daughter, got a job as an engineering consultant, tried to forget. But I never forgot. How could I? 22 people died. Good people. My friends. They died because something came out of the Arctic night and killed them. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that the Air Force won't acknowledge. Station Delta 7 was never rebuilt. The site was sealed. They said it was environmental contamination. More lies. I'm dying now. Heart disease. The doctors say stress, genetics, bad luck. But I know what it really is. I've been carrying this secret for 18 years. It's been eating me alive. My name is Captain Jacob Sullivan. In February 2006, something attacked our base in Alaska. Something made of ice and cold and hunger. Something that killed 22 people, and the Air Force covered it up. If you serve in Alaska, if you work at remote installations, be careful, be aware. If your equipment starts malfunctioning in ways that don't make sense, if the temperature drops impossibly fast, if you hear sounds that shouldn't exist, get out. Don't wait. Don't investigate. Run. Because something is up there, in the Arctic, in the ice, and it's still hungry. Thanks for watching Jungle War Stories. If this story affected you, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, tell me where you're listening from. And if you've served in Alaska, if you've been to those remote bases where the winter never really ends, tell me what you've seen. Tell me what you've heard. Because I know I'm not alone. I know there are others who know the truth. The Arctic keeps its secrets. But secrets don't stay buried forever.